Hello and welcome to Not Done Yet, the podcast celebrating life, challenging ageism, and proving that retirement is just the beginning. Brought to you by the Civil Service Retirement Fellowship, a national charity specialising in supporting former civil servants and their dependents through charitable services built round friendship and advice. This is the space where experience meets curiosity, wisdom meets possibility, and where we ask a very simple question: what comes next? Each episode, we will chat to inspiring people who are redefining later life, from new careers and creative projects to volunteering, learning, activism, and adventure. Because retirement isn't the end of the story, it's just the start of a new chapter. And if you're listening, the chances are you're not done yet either. So, my name is David Tickner, and I'm Chief Executive of the Civil Service Retirement Fellowship. And I am pleased to introduce my partner in crime for the podcast, Denise Headley. Denise is the CSRF's Deputy Chief Executive and an experienced broadcaster herself, running her own weekly podcast on politics and world affairs. And our first guest on our new podcast is a CSRF stalwart. Jean Anderson has been supporting the work of the charity as an office volunteer for over 10 years. Before she retired, she had a long career in the civil service, and you can hear her reflections on that in our 60 Voices podcast, which is available on the CSRF YouTube channel. But she's not here to talk about work, but rather to share her thoughts, feelings, and experiences about the joys of retirement. So a big applause and welcome to Jean.
Hello, Jean, and it's lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too, Denise, and David.
And it's so nice of you to join us for our inaugural podcast, Not Done Yet. And I think the title speaks volumes about you, Jean. And I'll say that reason why, because I think that you are the epitome in many ways of what retirement looks like. And I'd just like to ask you, Jean, what is your key to retirement, happy retirement, and that gives you that zest for life?
I think keep yourself occupied, really, and have things to look forward to, and try different things, new experiences, new places, as well. But and also make lots of other things. Make sure that you meet people, you socialise, and that way often you do get introduced to new things.
What was the first thing you did when you retired? Do you remember?
Well, at that time, I was with my partner, and
Yeah.
also it wasn't too long before we had COVID, so we couldn't do a great deal then. We certainly used to enjoy going on holidays together, and we saw a certain amount of the world then. But no, I can't remember. Oh, I do. The first thing I did I went to the job centre and got myself another job, because I took voluntary redundancy at 58 from the civil service, and I wanted to work a bit longer, and then I worked until I was 61 in the Open University.
But I think that wasn't full-time work, was it, Jean? Or was it full-time work?
It was Monday to Friday. It was something like 9 to 3 with half-hour lunch breaks. So it was.
Oh, right. Okay.
But it was part-time. Yes.
So when you weren't doing that, in terms of embracing free time, looking at other things to do, what sort of things caught your eye, well, as you were going through that process?
Well, I think it's probably easier to jump to the last few years, really, when I was on my own, because when you're on your own, you have to be in charge of exactly what you're going to do. But when you're with someone, especially someone who's not well, or during COVID, things have to revolve around them and the limitations of what was his name? The then Prime Minister was with the blonde hair.
Mr. Johnson.
Boris.
Boris, thank you. Told us we could and couldn't do.
It's interesting when you talk about, when you were, because life obviously changed for you in retirement.
Very
because
much.
Your partner unfortunately passed away, but that I think didn't stop you from making a particular type of pivot, because what I've noticed about you is that you've traveled, as far as I'm aware, in the time that I've known you, to quite a few places. So what got your mind into saying, look, I'm going to take quite a big leap after such a major life-changing event and be in charge of myself in a certain way? I mean, what motivated you to go on some of the places where did you go, firstly?
It took a couple of years to be honest, really, because grief, does really hit you. But I think the first one I did was I'd heard of the Lost Gardens of Heligan and the Eden Project, which are both interesting places in Cornwall. And I knew anyway, and my partner had passed away by then, but I don't think, but they're sort of gardens that probably wouldn't have interested him very much anyway. So it gave me the opportunity to completely suit myself. And so I looked into going there on my own by public transport, and it looked a bit difficult. I could have booked myself in a hotel and managed to get myself there, but they were a bit out of the way. And then I realised that there was a coach firm that were actually doing a trip to both of those places. And that's what motivated me to do that. And I actually met a lady who on the coach. We were sitting next to each other, and she was really into gardening and horticulture. And we went round together to both of those places, and I learned quite a lot about plants and things from her. So it was a great success, and I like taking photographs. That's another thing that motivates me.
Yes, we love your pictures, Jean.
Flowers and gardens, and are lovely to photograph.
I think that's pretty brave, though, because you made a friend. And that in itself sometimes is hard for people in retirement, because they're only used to work colleagues or especially, like you said, after suffering a period of bereavement, going out and actually allowing yourself to be vulnerable in a way to make new friendships. I think that takes a lot of courage.
Well, this lady had actually had a bereavement from her partner fairly recently too, also for heart reasons. So it was an amazing coincidence. We kept in touch a bit afterwards.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Do you still have contact with that lady that you'd met on that trip?
I don't know. We were thinking of going on holiday together, but it never came to anything. She was quite a lot older than me.
But you allowed yourself to have a new friendship and to go to those places. And I really like to commend you, Jean, on you've been to other parts of the world. I think you've been to Asia. Could you tell us a little bit about what the motivation was for you to go and visit some of those places? Where did you go in Asia?
Well, I felt like being a bit more adventurous, because as now I'm retired, obviously, I know that my health won't get any better and will probably get worse over time. And so I thought I really need to do and see what I can, while I still can. And that obviously included seeing other places, and a package holiday was much more suitable for me than trying to go to the other side of the world on my own, where I don't speak the language, I don't know how to travel around or anything like that. And I thought, well, Japan really interested me. I think quite a few people go there on holiday. And I also thought it was quite a safe place for me to be on my own. And that's where I went with a Wendy Wu holiday. Also, I like the idea of the fast trains, the bullet trains. It was. I also
presumably the cherry blossom as well, Jean.
Yeah, I didn't see the cherry blossom because that's in May. And apparently it's very crowded, and we've got cherry blossom over here, of course. It's I don't have to go over there to see it.
But, you can have a look at one around the corner.
Yes, it probably is. Yes. But it's a combination of experiences and photographic places and things that I think that I'll be able to manage. It won't be too arduous. And it'll be in a group. But what years ago?
Were you worried, Jean? Obviously the first trip you did, you've done several others as we'll obviously touch on, but the first one, that must have been a majorly big step, particularly, you'd never done that long distance. I know you have traveled around the world when you were working, but obviously this is you on your own. Yes, you're in an escorted tour, but it's still a bit daunting.
I was terrified.
Yeah, I was going to say you did really well.
I started. Yes, I was, because I didn't know the setup, and I was frightened that I would land in Tokyo, get off the plane, and then have to find my way to my hotel in Tokyo on my own, and I hadn't a clue how I was going to do it. Luckily, the company I go with, they meet you at the airport and they take you to your hotel. So I wish I'd have known that, but it wasn't clear in the brochure, and I was really worried, about something very simple like that.
Was it a Wendy Wu? Sorry, lady. Was it a Wendy Wu that you went on?
Yes.
And you see, I think that's a really important point, the point you made about safety and comfort. And I think it's pretty brave of you to say I was terrified, because that's what a lot of people, sometimes terror paralyzes and it doesn't allow you to do any space. But the important thing about recognizing an emotion is that you can name it and then potentially address it. And so the concern for you was about safety, but you didn't stop. That never stopped you from going. It actually was a consideration, which is a very important consideration when you're traveling by yourself. But yet you had the what's the word I'm looking for? The forbearance to say, look, okay, I want to do this, but I'm going to try a different way of doing it. And I think that's very brave. And I think after we reach a certain point in life, we avoid fear. We avoid.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that.
I agree. Yeah,
that's a very good point to make, because I think it's very easy. You could have taken the route when you were considering that to go, oh, well, I quite like to do it, but I've caught, I'm too old to do that, and yes. I can't, I couldn't deal with the stress and the worry, and it's much easier for me to look at pictures of it in a book, as opposed to say, I need to be brave. I need to take that first step, and you did, and that's. In the whole not done yet philosophy, you proved that it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter how worried you might be, if you have that little bit of courage and draw deep on that, you can exceed your own expectations. And I think the credit to you for doing Japan. And I think we're right in thinking, so moved by your strength to do Japan, you've subsequently done 2 more in Asia, have you not, Jean? Because you did China,
after Japan, it was
and Indonesia.
But then it was Vietnam, Laos, and
one for this year. Is that not right? I think you went recently.
Booked for Turkey, but bearing in mind what's going on over there at the moment, I don't know if the Foreign and Commonwealth Office will.
Well, I think currently they've got about 100,000. I heard the news, I think, this morning. And the flight they had scheduled to get people out of Oman last night didn't take off.
I heard that. Something wrong with a plane. I wonder if that... Yeah. But I mean, you wouldn't want to get on a plane if you thought there was something wrong with it, would you?
But I think there's about 300,000 UK nationals stranded across that whole area. And so at least... we can keep our fingers crossed that when is it you're going, Jean? May, is it?
In October.
Oh, October.
Hopefully.
For the water.
There'll be a cessation by that point.
If we've still got a world to travel in by October.
Please. Well, we're not done yet.
No, exactly.
Absolutely.
We're not done yet. But what I was going to say to you, Jean, you said you went to Vietnam, you went to Laos.
Cambodia. That was all in the same trip.
And Cambodia. Can you tell me what that was like as somebody who's come from the UK, from London, and what it was like experiencing that type of culture and being in that space? Because I think sometimes people, they don't want to come out of their initial comfort zone, but you've done that, you've taken that leap. And I'd just like to know what was that experience like? What did you see? Where did you, what did you eat? Did you, what clothes did you?
That's the thing. I mean, everybody always, sorry, on a sidebar, because this podcast has no scripting in the sense that we go all over for the enjoyment of the listeners, of course. But the food, I mean, a lot of people, let's be honest, if we're talking, the British do not English, do not have a great track record about the embracing of foreign cuisine, do they? I mean, a lot of people go millions of miles, not millions of miles, but thousands.
And they want to eat egg and chips.
Exactly, or where's my fish and chips? Or
they do eat a lot of curry. So in London, where I live, anyway.
Was the food an issue, Jean? Was that a consideration?
It wasn't. Well, one good thing is we were staying in hotels, and most hotels have a buffet breakfast where you can help yourself to what you like. And they normally have a local cuisine for the locals, and also a westernized cuisine, for Brits. So you can have some sort of noodle type of meal, or if you want, you can have sort of toast and croissants and jam, and so that will keep you going anyway. But the travel company tried to mix Western type food and English type food. Certainly in China, I like Chinese food anyway, so that was no problem.
So of all the places you've been quite open to experiencing the cuisine of the country that you've visited. Yeah.
I love food.
What was the biggest shock to you on the food front? Because many years ago, just again as a sidebar, which we're going to be doing a lot of, I suspect, during the course of this, but I worked before I went to university for Missions to Seafarers charity, and I was based for 18 months in Mombasa in Kenya, which was an amazing experience, working with Merchant Navy, supporting, and I got invited on board I think it was a Korean ship that was docked in Mombasa Harbour for lunch, because I was working as an assistant chaplain, which was like a junior dog's body to help all the sailors who came for health and support and time to relax. And they put this amazing spread of food in, and I had no idea what I was eating. So I was sort of like picking away, aged 18, and then someone said, "Oh, how did you like I can't remember I don't think it was dog, but it was something rather random." And I sort of thought, it's that psychology element. Up until the point I knew what I was actually eating, I didn't have a problem. But the minute someone said, "Oh, do you know you're eating that?" It was like, "Thank you very much. I'm putting that around the plate."
I think that there's another. I mean, in London, you get all sorts of food in different types of restaurants, and by the time you're retired, if you're interested in sort of experimenting with food, you probably had quite a lot of different cuisines. We've got so many different sorts of restaurants over in London, haven't we? I don't know, Japanese, Korean, all sorts. That you've probably had quite a wide.
What was the most adventurous dish you had on your holidays, though, Jean? Do you think, if you were going to pick one?
We didn't really have anything very grisly, as far as I'm aware.
How disappointing!
Celebrity, get me out of here.
I think they did show us some insects, but luckily they weren't serving them to us in China. But I wanted to go back to what you were saying, Denise, about I had to make that first step, book the holiday and actually get on the plane. I would say that not traveling the world isn't necessarily everybody's cup of tea, but that applies to anything that you're thinking of doing, whether it's, joining men in sheds or whatever, or taking up a new hobby or an exercise class or something. Especially when you're like widowed or on your own and you're retired and you're living on your own, it does take a lot of courage. And I'm not necessarily suggesting people go around the world, but it might be just down to the local church hall to join their Tai Chi class. Could be equally frightening, really. So it's a case of making a step in whatever direction you want to take that step into, not necessarily Japan or something.
But don't you think that's about your essence for life, though, Jean? Because I think quite a lot of the success that people have in life is their attitude. If you've got a certain type of attitude, that then translates into a physical space. You do particular things. And it's like you're saying, for some people, it's hard for them to come out of their comfort zone. But the thing is, if you stay in the zone of comfort, you never have any real challenge to yourself, because you're just doing what you do normally. And when you retire, you're so used to a life of work that it's very difficult sometimes to pivot away from that. The phone's not ringing, you're not being asked to answer emails or submit reports, but you now have to think about, what can I do within myself to still feel purposeful? And what I see about you, Jean, is that the way you do that is you have yourself occupied. I mean, I've been at the CSRF for 4 years now, but you've been there for 10 years. So already you've begun that. Then I know that you have a walking group that you attend. I know you love libraries. You read loads of books because you're part of our book club. And today is it today International Book Day?
Today is World Book Day. Yeah.
Today is World Book Day. So you are part of the book club. So to me, you look like the sort of person who, irrespective of where you were in your cycle, you will be doing particular things because that was your thing. But some people, like you say, find that hard. But it's about, sometimes having the confidence to accept that you're afraid and not being afraid to say, I'm afraid. And then once you've accepted that you're afraid, then the question is, okay, what do I do next?
Because I think on that point, that's a very relevant point. And I think, Jean, I can entirely agree with what you said in your description of Jean, because I think if you let fear win, you're going to actually end up having nothing in life, because
your horizons are narrowing.
Exactly. Because there's always a reason. I mean, if we're all honest, sometimes we can sit there and always think, there's a very good reason why I don't want to do something. You've got to really wind yourself up to go, no, I could just slump in my chair and not do it. I now have to be brave to actually open the front door and go along. And I mean, on that, I mean, certainly what you've said, Jean, about that fear factor, I think is very true with the group network. I mean, we obviously, as you know, and for the benefit of listeners, we run local community groups, and they can be very frightening. I mean, we don't have as many new people going along to group meetings as we'd like, but equally what we try and say to our group leaders is have somebody on the door who's like meet and greet. Or if you have somebody new who wants to come along, reach out to them before the meeting, maybe have a chat with them on the phone. Absolutely. And get them to feel a little bit relaxed. So when they walk in, I mean, I've been, as you guys know, all around the UK visiting groups last year. And there's still, to a degree, there's, and I hope I'm not offending any of our group attendees who may listen to this, but there is still a sort of a set order at group meetings, i.e., Mavis always sits here, Beryl always sits there. Don't sit on my chair. I'm going to put my handbag there because my best friend is going to be here shortly. And so if you're new and you don't know, it's like going into the jungle.
Dynamics.
Exactly. You don't know where you're sitting.
You might end up drinking tea from Mavis's teacup.
Exactly.
But you must have been drawn to going to Mombasa at such a young age too.
I remember, well, I was quite lucky because I was at school we had quite a big international class grouping. So I'd met lots of people from all over the world when I was at school. And the whole idea of Africa, I mean, it's the most amazing continent. I'm very lucky I've been. And I don't think anything prepares you for the whole game reserves and just the fact you've just got open space. I mean, it's just on another level which words can't describe. But I suppose being 18, you have no fear at the age of 18, unlike at the age of 88, where you're like, oh my God, I've got a bit more fear going on. And when I was looking for taking a gap year, and I applied for jobs and school assistant, and that fell through and all the rest of it. And then this thing popped up with missions. It was called Missions to Seamen at the time. I can't imagine why they changed the name. So they rebranded to Missions to Seafarers, which I think was a much more PC type.
Yes.
They were a great charity.
I just got your joke.
Yeah, very good. I probably shouldn't have said that, but hey ho, they can always edit it out. But they did great work, not dissimilar in a way to what we do. They were doing friendship and support for members of the Merchant Navy, and they had centres in all the international ports, which had bar, cafe. There was a religious element to it because obviously the word mission was in there. So they all had chapels and they all had chaplains, not all ordained chaplains, but people who ran the centre. But what they did do is they had like assistants who were like youngsters like me who thought they wanted to travel the world and make a difference, who they would give board and lodging to and some little pocket money to go and stay. And ordinarily, I read all this information and they said, anybody under the age of 21 is very unlikely to go outside of Europe. So my mum instantly was like, thank God for that. It's not going to be going very far. And when I went for the job interview, in the days before video conferencing, so I had to hot foot it up to London, sat in the waiting room, had the interview, and they said, "Oh, well, I think we can just about give you a job. You're quite quirky and loud." I was thinking, no change there then. That's not something that's diminished over time. And they phoned up after and said, "Look, we'd like to offer you a post." And I was, "Oh, great! Because obviously the window is closing." But the only thing is, we would have to send you to Mombasa. And I was like, "Oh no, how awful." At which point my mum was like, what? So mum was, I mean, she did come round, but initially she was like, oh my God, I'm sending my son is going all the way over there and I'm over here. But it worked out fine, but it was a great experience. And I mean, I learned a lot from it. I think as you always do in any work experience. But the continent was amazing. But and people,
I just say that, Dee.
yeah,
In terms of, and this is a question for you and for Jean.
yeah,
In terms of leaving your existing culture and going elsewhere,
yeah.
did that change your worldview? I mean, Jean, your travels to, I mean, you've traveled while you were with your partner and you were an employee. But when you retired and you started traveling on your own, do you feel that those places that you visited changed your views in any way of the world, of yourself, of anything?
I suppose it's fairly luxury travel. Well, I wasn't. Perhaps younger people might have done, dressed as an Arab and going in the desert or anything like that. So we would be staying at international hotels and traveling in coaches or bullet trains or something like that. So we weren't meeting the locals. Well, we did a bit. We had a meal at a local family's home, and we did quite a lot of different things. We made origami, paper folding, but I'm not sure. I mean, we passed some geishas, but I didn't really. I'd read a book about them, but I didn't really get involved in the culture. That would be one very different one from ours. So. Although it was seeing the sights, it really was as a tourist, I'm afraid. And obviously I was there for a limited time. It wasn't as if I was staying with a local family.
I think you saw it firsthand, which I think is a plus point. So in terms of broadening scope and understanding, to answer your question to me, Dee, I would say 150% yes. And in such a good way. And I think I've been really lucky, I think in various points in my life as I've got older, that I wasn't, at all the jobs I've done, I've been lucky enough to have a wide cross section of people I've come into contact with. The Mombasa job was just amazing for it showed you the disadvantages of colonialism. There was still, for example, I'll give you an example. There was in Mombasa, they had the Mombasa Club, which was this very, all that dark wood, teak and all the rest of it, verandas, gin and tonics and all the rest of it, terribly exclusive.
Socks and sandals.
Exactly.
I've been to the India Club in London.
Exactly. Well, probably a bit similar to that, Jean, though, but similar in concept.
Yes.
And it was one of these places, as an 18-year-old, I got taken in by, because there were all these shipping magnates who were running the companies who were making donations to the charity, and they'd be like, come along, you poor little chaplain's assistant, we'll take you for a drink here. And you go, and it was great to see it. I mean, to see it, but also the irony was, you go through the doors of the Mombasa Club, the women were not allowed in the bar. They had to go and sit up in the veranda. The men were in charge of obviously getting the drinks. They would then take them up to the women. Women were not allowed downstairs. But not only that, going down through the city of Mombasa Centre, down to where Mombasa Club was, you're encountering people who are
living in black poverty.
Exactly. Yeah. So there was that whole split thing of, is this actually entirely real here? Because it seems to have no bearing on what the actual reality is. But I did meet lots of locals. I mean, one of the things that we were probably not supposed to do, which we did do, was go clubbing after we finished work. And there were two amazing nightclubs in Mombasa that overlooked the Indian Ocean. One was called Toys, and I will leave you. It wasn't as literal as the name says, but it had great music. And the one piece of music that always springs into my mind when remembering that time was Black Box Ride on Time, because that was like,
I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was like playing all the time. And they had these sort of like cages suspended from the roof with people dancing in, and a huge veranda with a barbecue on the roof that after you'd finished drinking copious amounts of gin and tonic and dancing, you could go up to the roof, sit there and look at the stars and have, a barbecue and all the rest of it. But it was, I think more importantly, is it does show you broadening of worldview. And I think coming back to the point about, it doesn't matter, age is actually a good thing. although not as old as some of our retirees. I would actually agree with that. And I would use you, my co-host, as an example in that, because since you've joined us as Deputy Chief Executive and also opened my eyes to listening to you on your weekly podcast and all of that, it does broaden views. You know, what you had previously thought was a done deal in when you were going through a particular walk of life. You realize there's always another way of looking at it. There's always another version. There's always another, you know, and things perhaps aren't always as boxed in by the, and I hate to use the word probably given our audience, and I hope people don't take offense, but the establishment has got a lot to answer for, in the sense that we are conditioned to a certain degree to believe what we're told.
And never to ask any questions.
But that's very true. I mean, Jean,
I think that whole thing about questioning yourself
absolutely
is how we're actually here. Because one of the things that I think is important about not being done yet is that you do ask yourself questions. You do say to yourself, like for you, example, Jean, you'll say to yourself at one point in your life, this is where I was and this is where I am now. But it's not about necessarily looking back with regret. It's about looking forward in a hopeful way. And I think that's really one of the things I admire about the way you do things, Jean. You know, you're hopeful, you're full of life, and that is an important thing. I mean, tell us a bit about your IT journeys, because I know that you have been, you know, you're very keen to use things like Zoom. I think you've gone to some tech classes as well, haven't you, at your local
I attend Silver Surfers, yes. Well, I've recently downloaded a Google Earth Pro as a result of a talk.
Wow.
And that's very good, and obviously, and that links in with traveling, because you can zoom into whatever part of the world you're interested in, and it also does the moon and Mars, and it's certainly improved my geography. Yeah, Google Earth Pro, it's called.
Have you looked at your house on Google Earth Pro?
I haven't looked at my house on Google Earth Pro. No, I've looked at more exciting things. So
tell us what you did look at on Google. What was the first thing you looked at when you loaded it?
I can't remember what was the first thing I looked at. It was trying to find out where my cousin who used to be living in Spain and has come back home, back to England after. It wasn't the same, she said, after we left the EU, and she's now a widow. I had a sneaky look at where she lives.
Oh, that's so cool.
It is very clever though, isn't it? And I think that whole technology thing opens an interesting question, because, you know, as we know from people within our own community, technology, there's a great resistance to technology. And I think to a certain degree with good reason, because to caveat, a lot of the people, certainly in the CSRF community, worked in offices that never had computers. So in that respect, they didn't have that grounding. We all now, I mean, certainly Dee and I, take for granted that we pretty much have most of our working life had computers on a desk.
But so I didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
But in the 1970s.
Exactly. But you, Jean, I mean, to take Dee's point earlier, you've got a major thirst for knowledge that you've had, I would say, all your life, but you've had even more time since you've retired to explore all of that. You know, you're never afraid to read a book about a subject. You're never afraid to try and find an answer to something. And I think that's terrifically inspiring for anybody who wants to say life stops at the age of 60. Quite the reverse. You know, you've got a massive opportunity to feed the mind and keep the mind active, which of course is equally important from a health point of view. But the technology element, there's a lot of people who still don't like it because they're afraid of it, but I think there's a more subtle element, which we've obviously been seeing since we started our digital working group this year, is I think there's an element of people don't like to be caught out. If they can't master something, there's a natural reaction to say, I don't know it, I don't like it, I therefore don't want it in my life. And I think that element is very much
how do you get over that, Jean?
Exactly.
That thing there. I don't like it, or it's new to me. How do you approach that? Whatever it is.
We did have computers, you know, they came in while I was there. And it's funny, and they came into more senior staff. And I know one lady telling me, she said she got it on her desk. She hadn't got the slightest idea what to do with it. It was funny, they put them there and they didn't tell people anything. And nowadays, there's quite a lot of help for through Age UK and possibly other organisations like libraries and so on, not only for how to use your device, but also if things go wrong, or what more things to do. There's a very good computer class that I go to.
Just on your point about this, your senior colleague saying, I don't know what to do with it. I
just
throw in an anecdote about when I was traveling. When I first joined the CSRF and I still went around all the groups, I often used to get invited for tea and cake with the group chair, before going to the meeting. They were they looked after me extremely well, all the group chairs, who sadly some who are no longer with us, but they all looked after me very well. And I remember going to the house, and I can't remember where it was. I think it was one of the groups in the Southwest. And I got down I wasn't driving then. I got down the train, got picked up at the station by him in their car, taken back home. And there was this terrifically starched, doilies and all the rest of it, and pot of tea and all the rest. And there was a computer on the desk. And I said to the chair's wife, oh, you've got a computer. And she said, yes, we've had that some while. Our son bought it for me. And she said, I must show you what's great about it. And she pressed a button and the disc thing came out. And she said, it's got a tea holder.
And there
I was like, okay. I thought I can't possibly disabuse her of the fact that she's found this great reason to obviously.
Where I was thinking that she was pleased she got it the disk drive, so at least she could watch DVDs on it, even if she couldn't use the computer. But
I think
it was even more basic than that.
I think she probably used DVDs as like coasters on her coffee table.
That's right. Yes.
But I think that point is important that you're making there, Dee. It's about it's about not being afraid to make a mistake. And I think if you've had a working life, maybe Jean, you can attest to this. If you've had a working life where all of your activities were about producing things to a certain way, there was no room for error in certain things. So when you go into a space where you're making mistakes, it can be very daunting and it can be a bit dispiriting. But I think it's about maybe you're not seeing it as a mistake, as opposed to, how long did it take you to ride a bike, or how long did it take you to learn to sew? But it's almost like when you're older, you don't give yourself the space to not get it right.
Yeah. And I think the other thing on that, which is something that we've obviously been talking about quite a lot on the work front, is if we can find a way to show that whilst it might be frightening, the ultimate benefit of understanding what technology can do, things as simple as we're obviously, for the listeners' benefit, we're obviously looking at a new online social group, which will be online, monthly, only 30 minutes, not a very, not cutting into people's work. But if we can actually break down the barriers from the people who are, oh no, we don't want anything to do with that, they could actually see, they could enjoy having karaoke or chair aerobics. Name that tune or whatever it may be, or listening to someone talking about the history of Britain or whatever it may be. There's a whole world out there that could open up if we can find the right combination to break down those barriers. And just anecdotally, I mean, obviously we're broadcasting this particular show in March. I just wanted to throw an appropriate technological anecdote, or actually not anecdote, a little historical fact for the month of March, that 150 years ago, as of the 10th of March, which is next week, we're recording this on the 5th, it was the world's first telephone call, which was made, I don't know if you know, but obviously Alexander Graham Bell founded the telephone. And the first call that was made, apparently, was to his assistant, Thomas Watson, who had spilled acid in his laboratory. And the first words spoken by telephone were, Mr. Watson, come here, I want you. So there you go. Just a sidebar, a little factoid. That's the word I was looking for. A factoid relative to technology to throw in there.
Well,
150
certainly,
years ago,
yes.
the telephone. So on that basis, where we've got computers and Zoom and video conferencing, we have moved on. And of course now AI. That's another thing, Jean. Have you experimented at all with
No.
artificial intelligence?
I haven't. No, I'm quite wary of it. I wouldn't know how to start, but also I wouldn't trust it. But certainly going back to COVID, it was very useful because a friend and I got a friend who's very bright, and she suggested we have Skype calls, which we did, and that made all the difference when when you can't really leave the house because of COVID, which we couldn't really, apart from walks or going to the shops. So and as people get older, or as the weather turns bad, or whether they become less mobile, that's really going to be useful if they can, like talk to their friends and so on.
I think that's a very good point. Sorry, go on, Dee.
Yeah, you said that you were a little wary of artificial intelligence.
Yes, give me some suggestions as to what I should do that I think, this is quite good.
Well, I think first of all, Jean, that you the fact that you're even aware of it is a plus, because, not being funny, a lot of people aren't aware of it. They're not even engaged in the conversation. But I think in terms of yourself, if you wanted to try something which is not going to cause you to feel any sort of like tension, I would go and use something like DeepSeek or ChatGPT, and you just type into Google ChatGPT, and what will happen is it pops up onto the screen, and you just press it like you do with anything else, and what comes up is it asks you whether or not you want to log in using your Gmail, and you don't have to, but it's basically like Google, and it has a little space bar. And what I tend to use artificial intelligence for at the moment, I'm using it in a very basic way. I ask it questions, or I would say to it, give me a list of, like, I was looking for somewhere to take my mum for Mother's Day.
And what did it give you?
Well, I said to it, can you give me...
Not wishing to ruin the surprise for Mama D, but what did it say?
Yeah, well, what I said was I wanted it to give me places where I could listen to music and I could go for a meal. So I put the prompt in, can you give me a list of places in London where I can listen to music and have a nice meal? And instead of using Google, which gives you 1,000 pages, it will give you 4 or 5 things. So what I use it for is to reduce the search for things that I'm looking for.
But could I, if I did that, how would I get back to Google if I wanted to just...
You just open a new tab.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
It won't dominate your search engine.
Because that's what I was thinking. It might be, it might just take over and you couldn't go back to your...
Oh, no, Jean, it's optional. You can choose to use it, or you can choose not to use it. And the way that it operates is that it learns human behavior. Exactly. So as you engage with it, so like now when I'm talking to my ChatGPT, it's not mine, I just go in, it always commends me when I ask another question. That's a great question, Denise. I think that I need a little pat on the back. Well done.
But I think on that, I mean, that's very topical, because obviously AI is in and out of the news on a regular basis.
Yeah. But Jean's point about it is interesting, because she's saying, look, this is how I feel about it. Yeah. I'm not sure about it. And I think that's an important area that we at the CSRF potentially could be thinking about. And I mean, on that,
you will remember when we were chatting to our president, Lord Sedwell. We had quite a bit of that interview where he was talking about how the civil service is using AI an awful lot more now to do tasks, I think, under the umbrella of obviously increasing efficiency. And I think the rationale is, if there are things that AI can do, then that can free other people up to do other things. So therefore, you've got a more efficient service. I mean, one might say, with a naughty aside, that perhaps they should have got AI to do the civil service pension scheme.
I was just going to say that.
But that's probably a tad too close to the bar for our podcast at the moment, I hasten to add.
And it teaches itself, doesn't it? So, yeah, what is their excuse if it's so brilliant?
Exactly. We'll come on to that in a moment, Jim. But I think the point, the AI thing, I mean, I'm very much a newbie, and I have to say credit to you, Dee, because I'd never even conceived of looking at AI before you sort of opened up the opportunity of what it can do. And it is it doesn't always get it right, Jean. I think that's the important thing to make, because I think it's like anything. the more you feed it, the more it learns. So obviously, the more info and mistakes and corrections it gets, and I think this is where the fear factor is. You know, we've all seen those sort of futuristic movies like I, Robot and all the rest of it, where machines are going to rise up and take over, you know, and we're all going to be subjugated, which I suppose from a futuristic point of view.
Not from a computer. No, from someone who's really seriously concerned about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but it does have a capacity. What I would say, just in terms of the positive things, you'll see our new logo that was created by ChatGPT, because I put into the mechanism this is what our podcast is all about. This, you know, create a catchy logo using our Reflex Blue and our logo that we can use for the podcast, and that's what it gave. So that I think it did a pretty good job on, if I do say so myself.
Were you happy with its suggestions where you might take your mum?
Well, yes, because I booked something yesterday. I got it all booked. But the thing I think would be good for Eugene to have a look is just to have a play. And I think sometimes if we play, playing is not learning in a way, because learning has a contextual of this is right, that's wrong. Whereas if you play with something, you don't have to make it right. You're just having a go. And I think that's
any old question.
Any old question, and that's the thing.
I've got a different question for you, Jean. We talked about obviously some of the amazing things that you've done since you retired, and obviously how you've pushed yourself, you've grown, you've experienced new things. Slight different question. In retirement, what would your biggest concerns be? I mean, in life in general. I mean, what are your worries as a retired person in today's society? Are the things that particularly concern you? You know, it could be, I don't know, bills or life or whatever it may be. What would you say?
The price of oil?
Exactly. What are your worries as a retiree at the moment?
Getting Alzheimer's, because then I won't be able to book holidays. I won't be able to pay my bills. I might get lost. I'll lose my keys. I won't be able to live on my own. Really, you know, that's the obvious serious worry. And physical health is less of one. For example, I'm in a flat which is up to a second floor and there's no lift. So if I couldn't do that anymore, that sort of thing. But it's mainly losing my faculties, because I live on my own and I haven't got anybody, you know, I get lost easily as it is anyway, but that's a separate matter.
Well, I remember the very first
Google Maps, Jean. We just all need Google Maps.
Exactly. You've now got Google Earth, Jean, so you've got no excuse.
That's right.
I remember
find anywhere now. I recommend looking at the moon as well and things like that. It's great.
Exactly. I remember you telling us in the very first interview we did of Six Voices that you got lost going to your civil service interview.
At Bristol, yes.
In Bristol, and had to ring the lady who then put the phone down on you, if I remember correctly.
I did. I could get lost on an escalator, but you know, it's mainly memory. I think, you know, is Alzheimer's. If you can't remember what you're going to do,
it's a difficult one, though, isn't it? To know how do you mitigate that, because there's not much you can do, I suppose, apart from keeping your mind as active as it possibly can.
I think so. Yeah,
I think that's what because that's what you do. Because you said to me, I mean, you read a lot of books, don't you, Jean?
Yes.
What are you reading at the moment?
The book I'm reading, it's actually, I found it in a mini library. It's topical for travel, really. It's quite an old book. John Simpson's, was a well-known BBC journalist.
I think he still is, John. I think he's the World Affairs editor.
It's really readable. He's been all over the world doing programs, and I've got to one bit where someone who turned out later on to be Osama bin Laden wanted him killed, and they were offering somebody else £500 to do it. It's a very, very readable book, or dollars it might have been. But it was a bit.
So can I ask you, Jim, what are your? I understand there are fears, because obviously in life there's got to be fears. But what are the things that you're saying? I would say your hopes and what you're looking forward to in 2026, 2027.
Well, yeah, I mean, good physical and mental health, I think, is really a must, isn't it? Yes, some nice experiences, some nice holidays, but you don't have to go far to have one of those. I went recently to there was a free voucher in some of the newspapers for a national trust, various national trust places, and I went to a place called Bateman's, which was owned by Rudyard Kipling
That's
for
in
over
Sussex,
30 years,
isn't it?
and his wife, and that was last Wednesday, and it was such a lovely day, and that was a sort of a little mini adventure really, and I enjoyed myself.
I've got some leave at the end of April, and my mum and dad always do like a house rental in the UK. And obviously, because they're a bit, last time we went down to Kent last year, but my dad wasn't very well. So to keeping closer to where they're home, I think that's the other thing, coming back to what you just said about health. I think that's a very good point. I think, and that's why your global travel is so impressive, because I think an awful lot of people do want to keep close to home because they've got familiarity with knowing where everything is.
Yes.
Yeah, or health challenges.
Exactly. And that whole global travel thing is I've got my pills, I've got my prescription, I've got, where's the nearest doctor, I've got my health insurance.
Yes.
And it's good. It's important, I think, that you do that. But equally, I understand totally why people do feel, my mum and dad do a lot of local maneuvering, and they have traveled all over the place during their lifetime. But I think they also feel a lot more comfortable being closer to home now than they did like 10 years ago or whatever. So I'm now the designated driver. Wherever we go, I'm the designated driver. But we're going very close to Bateman's. We've got a holiday cottage in East Sussex, and I was looking round the area. It's quite close to Battle, but Bateman's was on the map as one of the places.
It's well worth a visit.
Yeah, well, I would thank you for the recommendation. Interestingly, just on the culture front, because one of the beautiful things I think about not just London, but lots of cities around the UK, is that they have amazing incentives for people in later life to actually engage with culture, movies. Lots of the big cinema chains.
Matinees.
Exactly. They do silver screen, where you get a discount and all the rest of it. And there was one particular exhibition where I was doing some research before we did the first episode, which I thought we definitely deserve to mention because it would probably be right up the street for our audience, is at the Imperial War Museum. And they've got a brand new exhibition that's opening from the 20th of March, which is called Beauty and Destruction, Wartime London in Art. And it's completely free. So you don't have to pay to get into the exhibition. And it's celebrating all of the artists who were drawing during wartime. And I thought that would be quite interesting. But the other one, which is coming up in the newly opened V&A for East London, which I think is due to open around April time, is the whole celebration of Black music, which I think, again, is something that's going to be completely new, completely different. And looking at the images, we're covering that in the next issue of Fellowship News. So if you are listening and you get Fellowship News, you'll see a bit of a feature in there with some amazing photography. They've got some photos and all the rest of it. And V&A is another one, but a lot of new museums now. Of course, the other thing to point out to those listening
is the British Library.
National museums, people working in national museums are all civil servants. So if you are listening to this and you work for a national museum, you can join us. And we have had reach out with museum HR over years gone by, and certainly down the road from where HQ is, Greenwich, the National Maritime Museum. All the people who work in the National Maritime Museum are civil servants because it's national museums fall under that category. But those sort of exhibitions, I think, are fun. You get out and about quite a bit, Jean. I think you've been over to the West End a few times. And
you went to see the lights because we got the pictures in the WhatsApp group.
Oh, that's true.
Winter lights, yes.
And you went to see Hamilton, didn't you, last year?
Yes, I did. Yep, I went to see a few plays with the Home Office Retired Staff Association. I've been to the
that's another group that you're involved in, Jean.
Sorry?
That's another group you're involved with.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's the thing. It's a good idea to one thing I'm not in, but a lot of people run my area is the U3A. That's another popular one.
Lots of our members are.
The University of Third Age.
It is,
that's right, yes. I'm not in it myself, but I know a lot of people are in it.
Although listening to what you've told us in the course of this first podcast, Jean, I'm amazed you have any time to do anything.
And you do a walking group as well, Jean?
Yes, yes, that's right. More than one walking group, because there's one that goes on about one Sunday a month, which is nice, in the city. That's led by a retired City of London guide. So he gives us a lot of information as well.
Excellent.
Oh, that's so good.
Excellent.
I mean, when you
And
think about
they're
all
free.
the things that you're doing, you're part of a book club,
Mhm.
you volunteer for the CSRF, you're part of a working group, you're part of the Home Office Retired Association of Previous Employees, you
Mhm.
travel solo, you go to computer classes.
And I visit my mum on Saturdays.
Oh yeah, you visit your
family as
mum.
well. Family time.
You've got family time. So it just goes to show the versatility of your retirement. Your retirement is
But I mean, things people don't have to emulate me. There might be somebody who enjoys a lot of time, possibly my older cousin might have done, on their allotment, for example. I've got perhaps fairly narrow focus. There's all sorts of things that people can do and enjoy. And I thought that would be a community too, wouldn't it? And you'd be able to grow vegetables and things like that. There are probably lots of activities I haven't thought of. And church, indeed, yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
And I think, Jean, as we come up to, obviously, we've been this hour has almost disappeared, or has actually disappeared, but it's been so much enjoyable, and the conversation has flowed very naturally. But as we come up to the top of the hour, I think it would be fair to say, just to sort of wrap, you are the exact embodiment of someone
not done yet.
Not done yet.
Absolutely. And can you give us your closing thoughts, Jean?
Yeah.
About how you're not done yet?
Exactly.
I'm looking forward to a lot more experiences in the future. Well, my health.
And thank you. Just stay with us. Just stay put just for a second, Jean, and I'll just do the wrap. But just to say, we hope you've enjoyed the very first podcast of Not Done Yet. We are certainly not done yet, because we intend to be back as frequently as we possibly can. If you are listening to this on our YouTube channel, don't forget to click the notification button, because you'll then get notified of any new content we put on there. If you're listening and actually feel, I would love to be sat where Jean is, reach out to us using the CSRF website, www.csrf.org.uk, and we'd be delighted to have you as a future guest. But all I would say in conclusion, it's been a pleasure to be with you for the last 60 to 65 minutes. A big thank you, as always, to my co-host Denise for her energy and enthusiasm. But more importantly than anything, a huge round of applause for our very first guest, Jean Anderson. And on that note, we hope you have a lovely day. Enjoy the rest of your week. And we look forward to seeing you on our next podcast.